In today's video, I'm here with Steven to talk about what the best type of cardio is for you to reach your goals. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Parvella from ProPhysique.com, and today I got Steve here. You know what that means?
Science with Steve?
Shoot the intro. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed. We have a special intro now every time Steven comes on the show. So, and if you haven't checked out Steven's channel, he actually has his own YouTube channel. I'll link it below, so go over there and follow along his videos. I think you got a cardio video coming out, right?
Oh yeah, I'll have one on body fat and losing body fat. So
okay, so
very closely integrated.
We wanted to do a video on the science of cardio because it's been a minute, and we wanted to talk about, well, our thoughts on cardio, different cardio modalities, different cardio intensities, and how they can relate to you. So we brought out the board. So what I thought we would start with is time. Okay, so when it comes to time and you're working on a specific goal, is time on your side or is time against you? So Steven, first of all, let's start by defining what low intensity, moderate intensity, and high intensity cardio are.
So generally speaking, we're talking about the percentage of VO2 max. For the easier way to explain this would be towards maximal heart rate. So when we're talking about light intensity cardio, we're talking about cardio that we're going to be able to do for hours and hours and hours on end. It's not going to be difficult for our recovery. It's going to be very manageable. Moderate intensity cardio is going to be a little bit more than that light intensity. Generally speaking, I like to use the talk test. If you can hold a conversation, then you're probably in that moderate to light area. And as you're unable to hold a conversation, you're building more into that moderate to higher intensity. And for our purposes, higher intensity interval training or HIIT cardio, we're going to be talking about all out intensity followed by periods of either moderate or lower intensity depending on how you're structuring that.
Yeah, and so for the purposes of today's video, when we talk about HIIT cardio, we're talking about 15 to 20 seconds tops of an interval. If you're doing something for a minute or more, it might be higher intensity, but it's not, in the terms of the scientific literature, high intensity. Okay, high intensity is very short, aggressive bursts of speed.
All out.
So when it comes to using high intensity cardio, the typical protocol is going to be a lot less in time because you're going to do a few intervals. And I've started off clients with as few as like 3 to 5 true sprints.
Correct. It
sounds easy, but you're probably going to feel like you're going to vomit if you're not adapted to that style of cardio.
Yeah, and it definitely, it gets a lot less total time investment, which is nice with some really good conditioning. But man, I've definitely had some vom bombs going on in HIIT cardio before.
So when it comes to cardio styles, all right, the research is pretty clear. During HIIT cardio, you're going to burn more calories during that single session than you would if you just did low intensity or moderate intensity for the same amount of time. But we're going to talk about why that may come into play as a positive or a negative down the road. But when it comes to just pure time commitment, we're going to talk about what has the best time impact on your ability to lose weight. It's got to be HIIT cardio.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's more bang for the buck.
We're going to put a check there for time. Now, the reason being is if you want to burn more calories using the other intensities of cardio, specifically low intensity or moderate intensity, you're going to have to go for a longer amount of time. Now that can be a positive or a negative, but if you are trying to lose the most amount of body fat and you have very little time, high intensity cardio is probably your guy or girl.
So the next thing we're going to be talking about is skill, and does it take skill to perform this measure of cardio? Why this matters is, well, because we can get hurt doing physical activity, and so it can become very important. And so when we talk about skill necessary for something like HIIT cardio, well, if you're doing sprints, you probably need to be at least good enough at sprinting to be able to do that at an all-out intensity. Whereas something like moderate intensity or lower intensity cardio, we don't need to have a lot of skill for that. We can do something simply like walking or riding our bicycle, going out for a hike, and things that we may not even really truly think about as like traditional cardio.
Right. Yeah, so this is where we got to discuss kind of what your abilities or what you have access to, okay? Yeah. HIIT cardio can be done running sprints outside, but not everybody has access to a street. Could be weather-based, could be condition-based, right? Or are you trying to use an implement like a prowler or a butcher where you're pushing something with weight for a short amount of time? Perhaps even a swimming pool where you can do sprints in a swimming pool, swimming as fast as possible, right? So these are options, but if you don't have the option, then high-intensity cardio might not be the best for you. Now, my favorite form of high-intensity cardio when I have clients do it would be a bicycle. Because you can increase the intensity of the bicycle and there's very low risk of injury when you're moving in a circular motion. but it's not zero. So there still is some skill involved in doing a bicycle sprint.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think the bicycle sprints on the spin bikes are absolutely my favorite as well, and pretty much my go-to if I am doing any kind of HIIT cardio.
So I think for this one, we're going to say what is the one that doesn't require skill. That would be, to me, LISS and MISS, because walking and jogging are pretty low skills.
Yes. And most of us know how to ride a bike too, which is going to bring us into our next point, which is recovery. And when we're talking about recovery, we're not only talking about things like cortisol and stress hormones, we're also talking about just, does it make us sore? Does it impact sleep? Does it have any kind of really jarring impact on our day-to-day that may also negatively affect our weight training or anything else that we're doing?
Yeah, so the real thing you got to think about when it comes to recovery is, what else are you doing? If you're literally only doing a 20-minute workout every day and the rest of your day is sedentary at a desk, you probably can get away with HIIT cardio because you're going to have plenty of time for recovery and you're not going to negatively impact the rest of your day. However, if your primary goal is something like that we like to do, like bodybuilding or a combat sport where you're actually in the ring, does HIIT cardio, which is going to impact your recovery more, make sense? So it's all about looking your overall schedule, your overall goals, and perhaps HIIT cardio is even better for you if you need to work on your cardio conditioning for short periods, something like a combat sport might require. My man here, Steven, does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Do you add HIIT cardio, or do you use your Jiu-Jitsu training as the building block for that?
I actually try very much to not use Jiu-Jitsu as HIIT cardio, but sometimes it happens, particularly in these stuff. It's just the sport in and of itself.
Yep.
However, with the fact that I'm doing Jiu-Jitsu from anywhere between 2 to 5 days a week, on top of weight training from anywhere from 4 to 6 days a week, my recovery is very limited, especially as I've gotten older. I'm only 35, but it's definitely not what it was in its 20s.
Yeah.
So I have to be very conscientious of how much I'm doing and how I'm approaching those things to make sure that I am in fact still making progress. Because otherwise what happens is I get into that overtraining, under recovery, and now I just don't feel great, I don't sleep well, I don't perform well, and everything then starts to kind of tumble down.
Yeah, so this is one of the big reasons over the last couple of years I've really been pushing low intensity cardio at the beginning of a fat loss phase, which will eventually probably turn into more of a moderate intensity, because although I like to do walking at the beginning, by the time I increase the speed in the incline of a walking session, you will start to breathe deeper, and over time your heart rate will get into an area where we might consider that moderate intensity. However, we didn't start there, we graduated to there. So what I like to do is a style of cardio that does not impact my ability to go to the gym and lift weights and feel strong. So for that reason, I'm going to say for recovery purposes, LISS is going to get the check mark.
Absolutely agree. Boom.
All right, so for the next topic we want to cover is the interference effect. Now in research literature, and this is something that probably made cardio a bad word when I was younger,
Yep.
The interference effect was studied. Basically what they showed was that the higher amount of cardio that you're doing, it would have a negative impact on your ability to, say, be a strength athlete or be a muscle athlete. So there is such thing as an interference effect. I'm gonna let Steve take it from here.
So what we want to look at is, how are we creating the adaptation response for the body? And so if we're doing a significant amount of steady state cardio, we're creating this adaptation response where our body wants to be good at cardio. Well, being good at cardio and being a good bodybuilder don't always necessarily go hand in hand. We want as much type 2 muscle fiber as possible because it's bulkier. It gives us more size, more hypertrophy, if you will. And so what we would always say is, well, you want to do no cardio at all if you want to put on the most amount of muscle.
Yeah.
And that was this idea of interference effect, because if you did all this cardio, you would be catabolic, you would eat up your muscle, and you wouldn't be able to grow it. I think we've kind of gotten away from that as being an absolute truth, and we now understand that some cardio is probably still good. It's still good to have some cardio so that we have enzymes to utilize fat as fuel, and our overall work capacity is still decent. But there is definitely a point where, again, and we go back to recovery, too much cardio can not only get in the way of recovery, but if that's the majority of what we're doing, we may want to rethink that.
I always think of the analogy, if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll catch none. So if you're chasing being the best marathon runner you want to be, and chasing being the best strength athlete you can be, you cannot chase both of those goals at the same time and be the best at both.
Right.
Now, if you love doing both of them, great. Just understand that there will be an interference effect. When it comes to the kind of cardio that you're going to be doing, you have to consider what fits. So when it comes to interference, I would say moderate intensity steady state is going to have the most interference effect, because it's going to cause problems in recovery, and it's also going to take up a lot of time. Versus if you really just have a little bit of time to do a short session, you can do some HIIT cardio as long as you make sure it's not negatively affecting the muscles that you need to train. In the past, I would do some lower body HIIT cardio workouts followed up by some lower body training sessions, and I would notice it would negatively impact my ability to train those lower body muscles. So just focus on what is best for you.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is fuel. And essentially what we're talking about here is protein, carbs, fats. There is this misconception that you're going to burn just all fats or all carbs. It doesn't work that way. What we're looking at is how the total calories burned are coming from those things. And it does make a difference based on the intensity of your exercise. So if we're looking at the same 100 calories of total, and we know that that will be different times investments for each of these, how much is coming from carbs, how much is coming from fats, and how much is coming from proteins. So we're going to look at carbs and fats because that's going to be the big difference here between the two. And so on these more light intensity to moderate intensity cardio regimens, you're going to be burning more fat. So say 60% of your calories maybe are coming from fats at this point. Whereas when you get into that higher intensity cardio, more calories are going to be coming via carbohydrates.
Yeah, so the real thing to look at here, and I know we can kind of get caught up in like the fat burning zone for cardio or the sugar burning zone for cardio. What really matters at the end of the day is going to be the entire energy balance that we have. Now, I do love the idea that when we're doing low intensity steady state cardio, we are burning primarily fat as our main fuel source, right? But if you then eat more fat and store more fat after, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So the idea that the body has to be depleted of glycogen before it will burn fat as fuel is completely false, and I hear this all the time. The intensity of the exercise dictates the fuel source. The ability to create an energy deficit is what dictates fat loss.
And at that point, again, we're talking about total calories burned, which is where we start looking at time and type of cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah.
List, I'm going to give the win to on that one, just because it is more fat calories, the higher percentages.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what we tend to focus on, is more low intensity steady state, because we as a company, Pro Physique, and we are physique athletes, and we tend to work with physique athletes. Now, we work with lifestyle clients as well, and if they give us a parameter of, hey, I only have 60 minutes a day, well, we might have them doing 40 minutes of weight training and 15 to 20 minutes of high intensity cardio. Yeah. That's their hour, the most bang for their buck. So first and foremost, it should probably be at the top of the list, but I wanted to talk about this last because I think it probably gets overlooked. You guys are watching videos, reading articles about the best cardio. Who cares what the best cardio is if you absolutely hate it, okay? If you don't like doing something, you're going to try it, you're going to do it, but you're not going to stick to it. Find what you absolutely love. If you would have told me years ago that I would love cardio, I would have smacked you in the mouth. I love cardio. You know why? I get on my treadmill, I set it on an incline where I feel comfortable, but I'm breathing a little bit deeper. I put on a show, and I can kind of just drift off and enjoy the show that I'm watching, and it takes my mind off the process. High intensity cardio for me, I actually enjoyed it too. I'm an athlete. I grew up playing sports. However, I've had enough injuries. I've had enough old man 46-year-old bones that I no longer enjoy it for that reason. So it's got to come from a place of enjoyment.
Yeah, and for me, I think that it's probably easier as an individual for me to find things that I enjoy that are more on the lighter to moderate side. I think if you look at the research, a lot of people do enjoy the HIIT cardio.
Yep.
They do tend to be shorter study lengths, 8 weeks or so. You can find enjoyment in that, and if it works for you, it's a beautiful thing. But for me, I like to go out and ride my bike, or maybe go paddleboarding or kayaking. Do these kind of like fun activities that are kind of lifestyle, but also still cardiovascular in nature and getting me some energy expenditure. And it's really just kind of made my life a little bit better.
Yeah, and so when we think of cardiovascular exercise as any type of rhythmic activity that increases your resting heart rate, well, that's as simple as going for a walk. And if you can take your dog for a walk and consider it cardio, that's a win. Fitness trackers nowadays have a way for us to track our daily steps, our daily energy expenditure, and while they might not be ultra accurate, it can just create a baseline for you to understand that, okay, this is kind of where I'm at. If I want to lose some weight, I can eat a little bit less calories and do a little bit more of this movement. Finding something that you can consistently do that has a low cost of entry for you, it doesn't take away from other things that you enjoy, It's not hard to recover from, doesn't lead to injury. That is what's going to set us up for a long-term healthy approach to weight loss. Enjoyment goes to whatever one you enjoy. You want to run a marathon? Go run a marathon, Nick Bear. You want to go be a bodybuilder? Hey, I'm just going to have you probably do mostly walking. And if you enjoy HIIT cardio, that's kind of its own modality, because I think it can be blended with whatever you're doing. The thing that I would look out for is doing too much HIIT cardio, especially successive days, because it is going to create some latent fatigue.
Yeah, absolutely. Pay attention to how sore you're getting. Pay attention to if it's demanding recovery, and just make sure that you're, planning appropriately.
Yeah, and from a personal note, as someone who's gone through weight loss using, different approaches, the diets that I use the most high intensity cardio were the diets that I also happen to actually feel the most hunger between meals, and I also had the lowest body temperature and resting heart rate, and I'm assuming that's going to be because I'm actually creating a lower resting heart rate through high intensity exercise.
Right, you're creating that your body adapts to that. And remember, for most of us, hunger signaling is stress related. Most of the time, and I'm sure many of you can relate, when I'm stressed out, I'm hungry. I'm thinking of something like biscuits and gravy that reminds me of childhood, something simple. And we all have our own thing. So remember that physiological stress that cardio, the gym, and those other things that we put on ourselves entail can absolutely have an effect on things like hunger, which can ultimately affect whether or not we're successful in sticking to our diet.
Hopefully, guys, this helps you with your decision on how to perform your cardio. If you want a specific approach on how to start walking to get shredded, I'll link that video below as well. Check out Steven's channel, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.